Hey everybody, Nick Livingston here with this week's Honeit Podcast. I'm super excited to have Adam Hendricks and Jerry DiBartolo from Requisite Talent Partners on the podcast today. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, great to have you, and thank you for the time. I've enjoyed our conversations and thought it'd be really fun to bring you front and center and talk a little bit about the state of recruiting and talent acquisition. To start it off, maybe though, each of you have a great career in the space. I guess maybe you could talk a little bit about how you got into recruitment and what you were doing before Requisite Talent Partners.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So 25 years in search and staffing, Nick. I started kind of accidentally. My brother was in search and staffing, and he got me an interview, and it was my first job out of school, and I immediately loved it. I loved the fast-paced. I loved how competitive it was. And I love the ability to, kind of build your own business through it and make it what you wanted to, as well as just that human, the connection to the candidates, and then going into sales, connection to the clients. And then most recently, I was in leadership roles of running offices and just the training and development of folks like me when I was, fresh out of school, and helping them reach their goals and become professionals in the industry as well.
Excellent. What about you, Adam?
Yeah, I'm coming up on 18 years of search and staffing. So much like Jerry, I fell into it by accident. Had a friend that worked at a staffing company and said, hey, you should come interview here. And I did, and got into it for a lot of the same reasons, right? Competitive nature, really enjoy helping people. And it's a really interesting time in people's lives, right? Trying to find a job. So being able to connect clients with candidates with clients, it quickly became something that I was super passionate about. So I spent, 10, 12 years in sales. I was in some operational leadership roles with a major staffing company, moved on to a smaller boutique executive search firm, and worked in executive search and leadership consulting for a couple of years. And then we started this in July of 23.
Awesome. Maybe we could talk a little bit about your niche, your focus areas at Requisite RTP. Is it based on what you've been doing previously? Did you enter new markets? Talk to me a little bit more about where you're helping connect people with opportunities.
Yeah, I think that, so it's a little bit of what we've done in the past and a little bit of new stuff, right? So primarily we're a provider that's going to be best suited with the small and mid market, right? Sub 500 person employers. Really, the sub 200 category is really what we're finding is where we fit very, very well for a number of reasons. But from a skill set perspective, it's technical leadership, professional level staff, right? So mid-career professionals to executive leadership. And then industry-wise, it's a lot of energy infrastructure, architecture, engineering, construction, utilities, those types of clients. And then we've got a handful of technology clients and manufacturing firms as well.
Excellent. So I'm sure, civil engineering, technology, energy, these are all markets that seem to be changing always, but even hyper in the last, let's say, few months, even with some of the regulation changes. Are you seeing ebbs and flows of recs, or what's growing, what's shrinking? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, Jerry, I'll go first. I think just from my perspective, in that world specifically, I've spent a lot of time in my career in this kind of energy infrastructure world. You see obviously a lot of regulation, a lot of legislation that changes things. But ultimately, it's a world, I think, that's kind of underserved, right? For a number of years, people went to college and they wanted to be a software engineer, or they didn't go into fields of civil engineering or construction management and that type of stuff. So what we see in that world is there's a pretty significant gap between very experienced professionals and really entry-level professionals, and that the middle market is where everybody is, or that mid-career professional in that world is where everybody's really starting for 5, 6, 7 years of experience. And it's very tough for some of these folks to compete and recruit, especially the smaller firms with some of the bigger competitors that can offer more salary or better benefits. So we're finding that there's still a need, and there hasn't really been much of a change in terms of the demand for people. If anything, it's gone up, right, from what it was before. because there are retirements and there are people phasing out of this industry. So that's what we see specific to the kind of energy infrastructure world. Jerry, I don't know if you got anything to add.
Yeah, the only thing I would say there is, that Adam talked about the struggle of finding talent in that mid-career level. One of our biggest opportunities and something that we've been building out is our integrated talent solutions offering. And I bring that up because a lot of the companies, they struggle with the same issues. And what they need is they need a dedicated focus, and that's what that integrated talent solutions offers them. It's not easy to find talent in that space, and there's a lot of different reasons why. It's the competitive, the talent shortage, et cetera. And in order to do that, there's plenty of people that you could find. You go on LinkedIn, you know who the people are, and you know where they are working. But having that true partner that's going to be able to, I use the phrase court all the time, who's going to be able to court these people. And it may not be right away. It could be 6 months down the line. It could be a year down the line. There are several stories of people that we spoke to a year and a half ago when we first started our business that are now in that point in their career where they're looking for an opportunity. So you definitely need that partner that's going to be able to court these candidates, talk to them, build a relationship, find out exactly what they're looking for, and then present them to the client that offers them the best opportunity for their career.
And that's great. So for the folks on listening that may not be familiar with what that integrated solution is, differ than other models they've seen, is that's where you're embedding yourselves or you're looking and feeling like an internal recruiter representing their organization, right? Where you can even use their logo and branding or email addresses from their company. And then just think, you're now reaching out, you're building their employment brand, you're helping them with go-to-market and recruitment marketing. You're doing all these things on behalf of their brand rather than maybe the Requisite brand. So it's this additional service you're giving your client. And then think about from the candidates, they're getting to hear from a recruiter from the direct employer. Well, what do you think that does to response rates and things like that, where candidates think they're talking to a recruiter from within the company? So, I think it's a brilliant model. We're starting to see some of that. And yeah, but I think you're right, integrating, and then, you can, I think there's maybe more consistent revenue, cost structure for the client, right? Then maybe spikes and things like that with placement fees. So it's kind of a win-win in terms of building their brand, building an engine, and then, you having consistent revenue too. So just.
Yeah. And that's what, it's another benefit of just being, a boutique firm, that we're able to build that however the client wants it to look and feel. We'll give them our recommendation. We'll give them the best practices of what's worked for other companies and other customers of ours. But it's really building that solution specifically for them and what their needs are. You need a long-term strategy. How it was done in the past isn't going to work in today's market. It's just you need that. You need to have a long-term strategy in order to get it done.
That kind of leads us to something we were talking about in terms of the mindset of recruiting and thinking more forward to and being more proactive with how you're presenting candidates or delivering candidates that may not be a fit for a certain open job right now, but because you've got a relationship with your client, you know their business, opportunities or gaps. When you talk to someone, you can present candidates that could be a great value add to their business that maybe the general manager or the CEO hadn't thought of in a certain area or whatnot. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that you call, I think you call it the growth mindset in terms of recruitment. Maybe you could unpack that or tie that to the talent solutions that are possible and more in maybe a boutique firm that wouldn't be possible in a large staffing firm.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things in terms of mindset, right? That to Jerry's point, having a mindset of looking at talent acquisition from a strategic lens versus what we've seen historically is it's very reactionary, right? Oh no, we need a person, somebody left, we got to fill that exact role, or we need to add a couple of people in these exact roles. And the reality is in some of these industries or sectors that we're in, you have to look at adjacent skill, adjacent talent, because that exact profile is very difficult to attract, right? Without a very compelling reason for them to shift. A lot of times, effectively, companies are just asking people to do the same job at a different place. So without being able to articulate that story and effectively advocate for the client in terms of our integrated talent solutions offering, we're in there, we know everything, we're a part of the staffing meetings, right? We're a part of the strategic plan. So we know about positions that are potentially upcoming that may not even be on the board, so to say, right now. So it gives the client the ability to attract candidates proactively, be able to engage with these folks. But one of the areas where mindset is become critical is just your interview, right? When you do have an opportunity to interview a candidate, it's kind of breaking the mindset of the historic interview where you're interviewing somebody and trying to find reasons not to hire them, right? Versus kind of interviewing somebody and with the mindset or the perspective of how can this person help our firm? Where could they fit in exploring their background? Kind of like you're networking, right? Like when you network with somebody, you're trying to find mutual connection. You're trying to find common ground, trying to help each other out, right? It's not a one-way relationship. So if you take that approach to interviewing people versus trying to rule them out, it opens up doors that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have seen. So, and kind of going back to what we were talking about is one thing like Honeit for us we've been able to infuse Honeit in really every stage of the game, from the sales process and communicating with new clients to say, hey, listen, this is how we screen people, to effectively being able to go into new industries that we're not experts in, because we can work on the front end collaboratively with the client to build a Honeit profile and build some of these interactive profiles. And in a market that's as competitive as it is for talent, it gives us maybe just a little bit of an advantage to get that candidate to call us back versus some of our competitors that are just reaching out with a bullet pointed job description and a short email, right? So, because one of the first questions a lot of candidates ask us now is how long have you worked with a client? What do you know about the client, right? What do you know about their business? And because there's a lot of recruiters out there that are just kind of doing their thing, right? They're calling candidates and they don't know much about the client and they're trying to, you know what I mean? It's a race against the clock in some cases because they're working on a contingent search. So they don't necessarily have that depth of knowledge to the customer.
That trust factor has always been a competitive advantage in our industry, right? Trust with candidates and being able to convince them that you are a recruiter worth talking to, or you have a rec worth considering or an opportunity worth considering. That's huge if you can instill that trust on that first touch with the candidate. Same thing with hiring managers. If you can instill trust and transparency and authenticity in your deliverable, it's a real great way to stand out from other recruiters who, it's amazing, many recruiters still just forward a resume and that's it. They're like, found your resume, right? We know they talked to them. We know they might have done a really comprehensive screen, but they're not showing that. So it's hard to unpack it.
And Nick, just really quick, just to jump in, we talked about that embedded piece. That's another benefit there is candidates are more likely to talk to you the more that you're able to share about a position. Sharing the company name, sharing the comp, sharing the position, all of those is really important early in that conversation. So having that integration with that team allows us to, a lot of people try to keep that close to the vest. A lot of recruiters do, and you miss out on the candidates. Adam and I, so maybe to a fault, I think we share a lot more maybe than we should. Ultimately, we have the mindset that we want to help that company, not just short-term, long-term, and we want to help that candidate. So there's we'll share Honeit for candidates, even if it doesn't mean we're necessarily going to get a placement, but we're able to help that candidate find a job. And I mean, we've been in the business a long time that it'll always come back to us.
And you're right. I mean, 1 out of 100 candidates may very well go around your back and apply directly, but I'm guessing they're not going to be the ones that get the job for a number of reasons if they're willing to do that in the first place. So being transparent, offering value to the candidate up front at the risk, you're right, of a little bit of, but you're right. If it's still connecting the candidate, the client will probably find out that it was you who, and maybe they'll.
And our clients have been great with that as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
What other ways are you differentiating? I mean, we talk about having control over a boutique recruiting firm versus a big staffing company that might have procedures or tech stacks that you have to work with? What are some other ways you find yourself innovating or differentiating your business?
It's a great question. And I think honestly, that's from my perspective, it's probably the most difficult thing in this industry, right? It's how do you really differentiate? Because I think about differentiation in kind of three ways, right? You have unique differentiation, meaning we do something that nobody else does, right? Which we don't have. You've got comparative differentiators, which everybody has. Everybody has a process. Everybody's got technology. You know what I mean? So we all kind of have those. And lastly, you have kind of holistic differentiators, which is what we lean into, which is, okay, we've got 40 years of collective experience. And Jerry and I come at this from a little bit of a different lens, where I spent the vast majority of my time in this industry on the sales side and the client side, not necessarily on the candidate side, recruiting, right? I've done it. But understanding how a business works, understanding the challenges, the actual real business challenges that these folks are up against. It's not just, hey, I need to put a button in a seat. I mean, there's a reason that seat is open, and there's a reason that somebody needs to be in it, right? So our experience, I think, allows us to maybe empathize a little bit more with the business leadership and understand what they're trying to accomplish, or understand how to ask the questions to understand what they're trying to accomplish. Versus just being a very candidate-centric recruiter that hasn't been exposed to the business side of things. So, and Jerry's got, I mean, he could talk about it, but over a decade of leadership, of leading people in this space and leading salespeople and recruiting professionals and that type of stuff. So I can't sit here and say, hey, one of the things that does make us different, frankly, is Honeit. Honestly, I don't think there's a lot of people in our space that utilize the software, and it's kind of mind-blowing to me that they don't. Between just the presentation of it and the amount of time that it saves us, being a small firm, having limited resources, right? It's a huge time saver to create those presentation links. It looks a lot better than anything I could create on my own. It takes seconds to create it, and the clients and the candidates really enjoy it. So differentiation is tough. I think a lot of it is just getting to know our customers at a deeper level, and everybody kind of says that, but Jerry and I have a vested interest in making sure our clients are successful and making sure we put the right people in the right places.
Yeah, and I also think, with our experience, as Adam talked about, and we know what works, and we also know what does not work, and we're great with having those conversations with our customers. Again, yeah. we want to make sure that we're not in it just to fill that one role. And, that's the transactional piece of the business that Adam and I are really not necessarily interested in, right? We want to work with clients that value recruiters and that see them as strategic partners versus just a vendor. And that means that we have to be that partner on our end as well, by not just supplying them candidates, but also helping them revamp their strategies. So, taking in, and we've received great feedback for doing that so far, because it's helping them change the way they see the recruiting world. It's helping them change the way they see their running of their business. And, their goals, a lot of them, their goals are based around building their teams and building them with high performing individuals. And it's pretty fun on our end to be part of that as well.
I love that. You talk a lot about the conversations. Kind of brings me to this debate we're seeing swirling around our industry, which is automation, also AI versus human to human interactions, conversations, the human element, the HR and human resources, right? Or the human and human resources. Where do you see it kind of today? What are we seeing? Can AI do our jobs for us? I think every industry, every function in a company is now questioning how much can a robot or an agent do versus a human. And I think the technology is there, and there's no question. I think typically innovation in human resources or recruiting typically lags that of sales or marketing by 5 to 7 years. You think email sequences, things like, I think things are going to be compressed, but are we seeing an opportunity here where HR or recruiting goes first to AI instead of sales and marketing or some other things? Or, what are you seeing now and where do you think it's going to go in terms of the future of recruitment?
Good question. Jerry, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. It's absolutely transforming the recruiting industry. And if there's firms out there that are not utilizing it, you're really being foolish, because there's so many things that AI can do in order to speed up the process. So there's so many efficiencies that you could gain by utilizing a lot of the functions. I just, the piece is that human touch that the AI is unable to do. Obviously, like the having that conversation, really listening to the answers of the candidate, and then looking at leadership potential for a lot of positions. There's a story that I think I posted on LinkedIn, and I tell a lot, but there was a client just a few months ago. They had a position open for 2 years. There was a candidate that was probably light on paper. And if you're utilizing an AI software, you might not even you might not interview that candidate. You're probably not going to interview that candidate. I had a Honeit conversation with the candidate. We dug in. We talked about their leadership experience. When the manager looked at their resume, he said no. He didn't want to talk to him. And this is a position that was open 2 years. And I shared the Honeit. I'm like, all right, you have to talk to him. He has leadership, potential, runway, et cetera. And ended up loving him. The candidate went through 3 rounds of interview, got the job, et cetera. So that human touch is so important in this world, that recruiter to candidate mindset, as well as that, that sales recruiter to client of talking to them. And that's where it really comes in. You have to know what your client needs. You have to know what their goals are in order to make that connection. But there's no doubt it's transforming the industry. But from you definitely need that human to human touch that you're not able to get without it.
I love that. I mean, we really think it's interesting. We're at a place now, with the stack or technology where you can really automate almost everything before your calls, during your calls, and after the calls, which has taken away so much of the tedious work for recruiters in terms of worrying about forgetting things or typing notes or typing summaries or write-ups after each call, that, we're hoping that technology can help recruiters just have more conversations and do more of that high-level, authentic human-to-human stuff. It makes me wonder, though, yes, you could go one step further and just say, hey, I actually want the AI robot to just do the interview for me. I think, though, from a recruiter who's looking about long-term relationships with candidates and clients, that you don't create the human relationship, you're not going to place that candidate 4 times in their career. They're not going to come back to you when they start looking, right? So where do you, again, automate the low-value, tedious tasks, which there's a lot of them in recruitment. But again, you're right. How do we elevate or improve the high-level, high-quality stuff that we do? I was listening to a podcast with Steve Cadigan, who was the first chief people officer at LinkedIn, was a Honeit advisor. He was on a podcast with the Podcast, and he was talking about AI being used to improve the high-volume stuff, but maybe not, thinking about it to improve the high-value or high-quality hiring stuff. Right. And I thought that was an interesting way. I just heard it this morning, but I thought that was an interesting way to distinguish. Yeah, is it just speed and just automating tasks? Or is it, no, let's elevate the profession. Let's improve the outputs. Let's improve the authenticity and some of that stuff. So what do you think about high volume versus high quality and some of that?
The interesting part about it, Nick, is that, to me, Jerry and I talk about this a lot, is I think from an industry perspective, the search and staffing industry, where contingent search is kind of the norm, right? It's a regularly accepted business practice. I think AI in that world has the ability to potentially do more harm than good, right? Because now you have 4, 5, 6, 7 agencies equipped with this technology to mass communicate with people. And in my opinion, AI is best served when it's human informed, right? I've got 20 years of experience doing this. So me putting a prompt or giving AI it commands is a lot different than somebody that maybe has no experience, has been doing it for 2 years, right? So I think the quality of the output of the AI, given the experience of the person giving the input, is going to be significantly different. But as you look back at contingent search is heavily predicated on speed and ownership, right? It's because all these companies are vying to be the first person to submit a candidate so they can receive a fee, right? Which is where we've kind of gone with not only integrated talent solutions, but our engaged services and our engaged search and retained search is really, and it kind of all comes back to the strategic mindset of the company. Is if the client views hiring as a transaction, you're going to be fighting an uphill battle from a retained search standpoint or doing anything different, right? But if the client is open-minded to different ways of getting things done, that's where a lot of the offerings, and I think AI can come into play very big, is being able to combine the knowledge of the external firm, the assets and the inventory and the marketing and all of the things of the company and the client, and putting those things together and leveraging AI to really put a message out into the public that's going to resonate with their target audience, right? For whatever skill set or level of position that's going to be. So, and that's been something I think that's been typically reserved for the executive search world, because it's a different compensation structure and people are willing to put in more time on the front end in terms of marketing and position profiles and client due diligence and all of those things, right? But it's tough because it definitely can automate a lot of the administrative function. It can put your message out there in real time almost. But that message has to be applicable to who you're trying to reach. Otherwise, you could end up doing some damage to the brand, right? So that's what we talk to the clients a lot about is hey, using 5 agencies or using AI to mass email, mass communicate with people could be good, but it also has some unintended consequences as well.
What do you think, Jerry? Any final words on recruiters versus robots, and how we
Yeah, you know what? For me, I did in my previous role, I did a lot of hiring, and what I loved about that process was just making that connection. And it's one of the things that I enjoy right now when I'm talking to candidates and asking them questions. And again, we talk about Honeit, and it puts you in that conversation, so you're not jotting down notes, so you're engaged in that conversation. Is just learning about really understanding that candidate and their background and learning their story. I think those are the nuances in recruiting for me that are fun, and those are those things like when you're in that mindset of making that connection and you're looking for a way to say yes. I feel like AI in certain instances could help with the screening of candidates, right? Certainly. But it could also help you continue down the path of hey, find a reason to say no, versus making that connection and really understanding what that candidate could potentially bring.
I love that. Automating the knockout stuff. But it's like I think the best part in our job in recruitment isn't just the software, placing the software engineer level 4 from Twitter to Facebook. Like that's straightforward, and a matching robot can do that, and a company's going to pay top dollar for that matching 10 out of 10 profile. And sure, I think the art and science of recruitment is how can we find that 6 or 7 who's undervalued at a certain place, figure out that they have transferable skills, and they could be a 9 at the right company. And now that company, if you think of human capital as an investment, you want to buy low and invest and grow with and have that person be more valuable to your organization. That's where recruiters can unlock that. But you can't just do it through a matching algorithm. You have to discover, Jerry, oh, you've been doing this for 5 years. You want to really be doing this. A robot wouldn't know that. It took me having a conversation to get that out of you. And now I'm thinking of these 4 other clients I wasn't thinking initially. I'm going to introduce you to these 4. And that's, again, trust, transparency, how we deliver. We can make those connections that aren't just a 9 out of 9 match. Absolutely. And in the industries that we're serving, the
you have to have those transferable skills and that transferable background, because the candidate pool is limited, and you need to look outside the box in order to continue to build your team.
Well, Adam, Jerry, thank you so much for joining. I think that's probably a good place to wrap for today, but we could probably talk for another hour on this stuff. Where can people get a hold of you if they're looking for any great candidates in the civil engineering, technology, energy engineering sector? Where can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, our website is just requisitetp.com. There's actually a couple things to draw attention to on the website. From a candidate perspective, we welcome any and all candidates to talk to, and clients as well. But if you are a client listening, and you're interested in talent, on our website, there is a specific listing of available talent in the top right corner, where we have profiles, published profiles of candidates that we've already spoken to and that we're engaged with, that we offer to, all of our clients at a 5% fee. So if there's firms out there that are looking for people, take a look at the website. We sign up for periodic updates as we update that with new talent. So, but website is the best way to get a hold of us, or LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll be sure to link that in the podcast too. But there's just a nice tidbit at the end there, a way to differentiate yourself with marketing available candidates, lower cost fee. You've already screened and talked to them. Maybe they were runner-ups or maybe not for other roles you're working on. But I think that's a great example too of differentiation, adding more value to clients, a new business model. That's the kind of thing that's super exciting right now in our profession. So congrats. Okay.
Thanks, Nick. We appreciate the opportunity. We appreciate the partnership as well.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye-bye.